Hi, everyone. Welcome to Friday night. It is Friday night, and I had no plans, and I decided I kind of wanted to hop on here and make a little video because my head has actually been racing, and I've been thinking so much about the upcoming weeks, actually the upcoming week specifically, that a lot of tension is really building in relationships and within ourselves. And we are being called up for some kind of revolutionary transformation in the way we do things. We are no longer going to be able to get away with the way it's always been done. And the reason why I felt compelled to make this video, with Mercury in retrograde, look, Mercury retrograde is a great time for productivity. It's a great time for creativity. It's a great time to really get things accomplished. We have a lot of support right now in the stars for accomplishing our goals, and I'll get to more of that later. But Mercury retrograde is a time when our thought processes kind of transitions from a left brain, logical, practical experience, which is a very mercurial style, very Gemini, very Virgo style, very much what makes sense, what's practical, how things are connected, connecting the dots, actually connecting the dots, and getting from point A to point B in a very logical fashion. When Mercury goes retrograde, we kind of shift from this left brain operating system to a right brain operating system. And we have this ability to think more in an intuitive way with images and, again, our intuition, a more feminine kind of quality. And there's a lot of blessings that come along with that. Our creative ideas have the ability to come to fruition. Especially when it comes to business and when it comes to making money and when it comes to being creative in our communication style, we have it's easier to communicate in a different way, and it's easier to receive information in a different way as well. And for me, that really impacts me as a naturally kind of intuitive person anyway, but also as someone that is ruled by Mercury, it highly impacts me. And I feel like my line is very, very direct to my sort of divine messages. And I think a lot of you experience Mercury retrogrades in a very similar way, where yes, there can be breakdowns in communications because we're now kind of communicating maybe in a different kind of way, or we're receiving information in a different kind of way. So it's not normal. It's not the way we normally do things, but it is a good time for us to do a lot of introspection. And we're always going through phases of introspection. It's always this kind of like on and off switch. It's kind of like when every time you walk into the kitchen, on, walk out, off, and it's constantly going in and out. There's always this ebb and flow going. But this Mercury retrograde is especially special, preparing us for this Uranus moving into Taurus. Also with the I'll kind of leave with that. I'm gonna there's a lot I kind of really want to talk about. And I do sense that the Mercury retrograde sort of initiated this tension, because the energy is different. It has shifted. It has started going backwards. We just had Jupiter start going backwards, and now we've got Mercury. So it's kind of like that retrograde tension, or that retrograde energy shift has started. And we were so great with all the planets moving forward. Things were moving forward. Everything was going. We kind of hit a slowdown in Pisces season. And now it really is about a different kind of approach. Okay. Now, the reason why I labeled this like, are you guys fighting? Because I've had so many people talking about the issues that they're having in their relationships, and Venus, being our relationship planet, it's a major player in the upcoming week, as it's coming into conjunction with Uranus in Aries. Conjunction with Uranus in Aries. Yeah, that's right. Venus, let's just think for a minute. Venus in Aries. Venus is very soft, it's very feminine, and it's in one of the most masculine placements that it could possibly be in. Mars ruled sign, but Mars is like Venus's lover. And I was just watching another astrologer today, and she described it as being like over at your boyfriend's house. And I was like, oh, that's such an interesting way of conveying that concept. You're still at home, weirdly. You're still there. It's not yours, but you're very welcome there. And you actually do have a lot of power there. And the power that you have, the feminine power that you have, because we have that right brain operating Mercury right now, the feminine power that you have, and the transformative power that you have, because this is all happening in a difficult aspect with Pluto. Well, a squaring aspect with Pluto. Venus and Uranus and Pluto. Things are changing rapidly. The buildup of issues is building rapidly. The expression of those things is going to be different because of the Mercury retrograde. So when it comes out, it's going to come out differently and it's going to be received differently. Does that make sense? And I hope those of you who are watching this video will be very, very mindful, because this energy is not going to be so intense for everybody. And it's going to be important for the people where it's just kind of like, okay, it's fine, whatever, no problem, to be mindful that other people are going to be hit really, really hard with this transit, and that they're not going to have the mindfulness that you have, and they are just going to let those things fly. And I talked about it in my monthlies, and I talked about it in my most recent weekly video that I did, where we're packing a punch. We got a lot to say. It is about asserting ourselves, you know. I kind of even am weirdly seeing this as like a really silly image that kind of popped into my mind, but it's like, here you have Venus over at her boyfriend's house, and she's kind of in charge right now because Mars is in Capricorn. It's in a different place, right? So she's kind of like doing whatever she's got to do there. And you have like a cable man or a plumber or something that comes over, and she's there and she's having to oversee things. And it's her way or the highway. You know, she's a very soft energy, but she's being amplified by the electricity of Uranus. And Uranus is about revolution, rebellion. It's about really doing things differently. It's about a totally different approach and never returning backwards, right? It's a real turning point. Now, Venus comes across Uranus often, but it's not always when it comes in contact with Pluto in this square. There's a transformative aspect. We cannot forget about that. It's transformative. And there's also this Mars-Saturn conjunction happening in Capricorn too. Mars and Saturn can really be super productive if you know how to push through and you know how to attack those obstacles and really go after the restrictions and say, you know what, I accept that these are restrictive and I accept that it could be an issue, but I'm still going to just charge forward anyway. It's going to be really great for the people that have that attitude, and it's going to be really, really tough for the people that don't know how to deal with stuff. You know, the people that don't know how to overcome obstacles because they haven't done the introspection needed. People are going to be very frustrated, and they're going to make really, really big mistakes. And these are things that are going to turn on a dime. Like if you are in a very happy, well-established relationship, there could be an issue that's been kind of building or been lingering. And now is the time when it's time to just take care of it and move on. And it doesn't have to be a big deal if both of you are kind of on board of like, let's just make this change and move on. But the problem is that just not everyone is there, you know? Not everyone is there. I mentioned in my weekly the Mars-Saturn conjunction because it is happening too in a square with the Sun, and also the Mercury retrograde itself, Mercury in retrograde. The sun squaring Saturn and Mars. There's an ego aspect here, a big one. And Saturn and the sun can be good, or it can pose problems. You know, if you are not willing to set aside bitterness, if you're not willing to surrender, if you're not willing to bend or to compromise, this is going to be very, very difficult. The more rigid you are, the harder it's going to hit. And this is not about making a big mistake and then asking for forgiveness later. It's not what this is about. This is about refraining from making the mistake in the first place. Not everyone's going to have that self-control. Because if you are struggling, or someone that you know is struggling with thinking before they act, and they're more prone to acting before they think, they're going to be doing a lot of stuff and thinking about it later, and it's going to be a problem. And the Uranus adds this shock factor, right? It's like Uranus is electricity. It's electric. It's rules the nervous system, has to do with systems and technology. When we think of our bodies as systems, and we think of our bodies as technology, and we think of the way we communicate with people, and the technology involved in communicating with people, cell phones, Facebook, social media, all that kind of stuff, it's all going to come to play. Mercury, again, Mercury and Uranus, both planets of technology, both in a sign ruled by Mars, and both kind of having to do with relationships with the Venus planet there. There's also this sort of illusionary aspect too, because Mercury is going to be an aspect with Neptune as well, which is in Pisces, the sign right before. And we've kind of already got over that Pisces quality. However, there is some like kind of illusionary stuff going on. Things aren't exactly what they seem. The things that we believe might not necessarily be the case. You know, a lot of us could be very, very quick to jump to conclusions and to not necessarily keep an open mind that there's a possibility that it could be a different way. Again, remember the ego of the sun in a square in an exact square with Saturn. This is on March 28th, all right? The sun comes into an exact square with Saturn on the exact same day that Venus and Uranus come conjunct. All right, so, I mean, when we're talking about the outer planets and the inner planets coming in contact with them, it doesn't happen every day. And I think that's why my mind has really been thinking about this, that this type of an arrangement, it really doesn't happen every day. And because Pluto is at play here, we are never going to be able to go back to the way it was. Relationships are going to end. Relationships are going to change. Everything is going to become different. The way we operate internally, right? If you're not in a relationship, the way we operate internally is never going to be the same. Mars entering Capricorn is so beautiful, because Capricorn is about realization. And when we think of the concept of realization applied to a warrior, the warrior that is realized, it is like the warrior that has been set free and has the ability to do what it does best, to fight. With the cooling aspect of Saturn, and I've said it before in my videos, fighting with purpose. People that haven't trained, thinking of sending an untrained warrior into the battlefield, they are going to be completely clueless. They have no idea what to say, how to say it, how to handle themselves, how to maintain composure. And there are a lot of people that are just going to flip, right? They're going to flip the switch. The story, you can never go back. Like, this is a real turning point. So for those of you who can feel the tension building, for those of you who can feel like something consolidating, it's not going to apply to everybody. But if you're fighting and you're in a partnership, you're going to know what I'm talking about. You can feel it, right? It's like slowly creeping up on your shoulders and kind of like just crouching there, ready to go, ready to be, released, kind of thing. For those of you who are there, you're going to need to be prepared for a big change. You're going to need to be prepared to assert your values. See, the thing I love about Uranus is its assertion power. Not a lot of people really talk about that. I like to think of the very stereotypical protesters standing out in the streets. It's a very Aquarian thing, right? Anti-system, challenging the norm, that kind of thing. And when we have these people that aren't afraid to speak out, standing there looking face to face, normally with those, policemen with the big shields and whatever, all the gear and all of that stuff, and they're not afraid. Uranus is not a fearful. It is about fearlessness, rather. And it is a fearlessness of the unknown. When we think Uranus, we think Aquarius, we think outer space, space travel, we think of unknown territories. Let's happily move into the unknown. Let's happily take this relationship to a level that we've never gone to before. And it's going to be really exciting for those of you who have stability and for those of you who have maturity. And it's going to be really hard for those of you who don't. And for those of you who are actually walking away from people, like, good for you. Good for you. Because there is nothing that can stop you now. Because you've set the standard now for yourself. And you set the standard for other people. And now you know what it feels like. I think with this Neptune in Pisces transit that's been going on, it's what is that? It's a long transit. It's what, 10 years, something like that. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but the Neptune in Pisces, we do have this kind of self-sacrificial nature about us, and it has been a learning experience for us to not do that, right? To not have this lack of boundaries, that boundaries are actually a good thing in some ways. And now I think many of us are building that fence between, what is the saying about fences and neighbors? Good fences make good neighbors, something like that. It's kind of the way that this is. We also can't forget about Chiron in Pisces as well. And I know we just went through this season and like, oh my God, Pisces was like floored, a whole bunch of us. But this semi-square, Venus and Uranus in Aries, semi-square with Chiron. It's our chance to let the wounds heal. But it's taking the healing, and we are accepting the responsibility for those things. And we're not waiting for the healing anymore. We're not waiting for the energy around us to shift. We're kind of like making it happen. I think that's really all I wanted to say. And I've been talking about this week after week after week, and it has to be said now because I think that this is like critical mass. The tension is so dense, and the amount of shift that's going to be occurring over the next couple weeks is so exciting. What was I going to say? I totally forgot what I was going to say. It's about the separation. The separation of the people who have done the soul searching, who have done the personal growth, who have reassembled themselves after the fragmentation process of Uranus coming into Aries and completely destroying our sense of self, and, you know, very, very meticulously piecing ourselves back together and accepting that responsibility. And then there's the people that didn't do that. There's the people that sat back and just let things happen to them and didn't do the self-reflection, didn't do the healing, and are very, very quite possibly not fulfilling their duty and not living up to the expectations that their soul had with this particular lifetime, right? And that is their, well, maybe they haven't necessarily, it's not that they haven't fulfilled it, it's just that their path is more a path of more difficult things type of thing. Their path is very different from ours. And that separation is becoming more and more apparent as the year goes on. And it will continue to do so. And I'm going to keep bringing it up because it's undeniable. Even myself, like I've noticed even with friends and family members that the connection is gone. Like I've learned what I've needed to learn from these people, and it's time for me to move on and for me to maybe associate with people that are more on my wavelength kind of thing. And that's just the way it goes, you know, and maybe some of you are in relationships and you've learned everything you've needed to learn from this person. And the separation doesn't have to be so dramatic. It can be peaceful. It can be simple. You know, I was on Facebook the other day, and I have friends in LA, you know, and they posted a video of a detachment ceremony. That's such an LA thing to do. I was like so annoyed that was even a thing, but I clicked on it because I was like, well, okay, let's see what this is. A detachment ceremony where two people decided that they didn't want to be in a relationship anymore, but they held a very respectful ceremony where they cleansed each other. They detached. They had sage and whatever other candles and whatever oils they needed, and they wished each other well, and they cut each other loose, and they said, you know, we loved as hard as we could, and we tried as hard as we could, and I appreciate and I'm so grateful for the experience, and now it's time for all of us, or both of us, to move on. And they did it in a celebratory way, which I think that the separation of us and certain partners or us and certain friends, you know, it can be a celebratory process because it is transformative. Don't forget Pluto, right? It is transformative. It is reshaping our future. It is reshaping who we are. So it's not irrelevant, and it's not something that is a nuisance. It's not something that is bad. It's something that is exactly the way that it was supposed to be. Like these planets are here doing what they're doing, and your soul chose to incarnate in this lifetime at this specific moment to be able to go through this specific transit so that you can have this specific learning experience. You know, it's all very, very high level. And I feel that a lot of people aren't going to be able to get over their emotional attachments, and that's part of their journey, you know, and it's going to make kind of the next phase when Uranus enters Taurus very, very difficult. And for those of you who can live and love and let go of the way that things used to be, and to let go of the status quo, it's going to be a lot easier. Okay? So I'm going to leave you guys with that. It's just kind of my Friday night rambling, nothing better to do, no makeup, nothing. But I just thought it would be kind of fun to do this video just because I'm sensing it personally, one, and two, I'm just seeing a lot of comments on my channel. So I thought I would address it. So I wish you guys nothing but the best. All right. Thanks so much. Bye.